At 79 years old, a grandmother decided to do something that, for many, would be a complete scandal. She kicked out all of her friends. She told them straight, "I'm tired of you." No long explanations, no excuses. She was tired of hearing the complaints, the whining, and the endless stories about illnesses. She decided her life was too short to drown in someone else's depression. You see, this grandmother isn't just any old woman. In her past, she was an athlete, a Komsomol secretary, and a department head in the regional administration. She had always been spirited and cheerful, and today she decided, enough. Why would a woman who has lived for nearly 8 decades suddenly cut ties so sharply with those who had been by her side for decades? The answer is simple. It's the instinct for self-preservation. When you are surrounded by people pulling you down, the brain starts to give out prematurely. But if you remove this dead weight, a chance appears to maintain clarity of mind. From childhood, we were told that we need friends always and everywhere. But what if rejecting these imposed rules of friendship is the secret to vigor in old age? The grandmother decided to go against convention, and her choice sounds like a challenge to everyone over 60. She looks at her peers and understands, yes, we are the same age, but the difference is colossal. Some sit around, discussing medications and neighbours. Others continue to keep their minds sharp. For her, friendship had ceased to be a salvation and had turned into a threat. That's why she chose solitude, not despair, but inner strength and a sober mind. The fact remains, her action makes you think. Old age isn't about the number of friends around the tea table. It's about who controls your brain, you or other people's endless complaints. Is old age without friends a tragedy or a wise decision? This is the very question that confronts everyone who has crossed the 60-year mark. We are used to hearing, the main thing is company, communication, and close ties. Without them, old age supposedly turns into an emptiness. But what if this is a delusion that prevents us from preserving what is most valuable? A clear mind and a keen interest in life. Natalia Bekhtereva, the legendary neurophysiologist, boldly challenged this illusion. She asserted, "It is not friends who keep us in good health, but the brain that gets a daily workout." It sounds harsh, almost like a slap in the face to conventional ideas. For decades, we were told that happiness in retirement means cozy get-togethers, memories, and shared tea parties. But what if it's the other way around? What if these very tea parties are what turn the brain into a lazy mechanism incapable of work? After all, without challenges, the mind degrades faster than the body. And this is where the main question arises. What is more important to us? The illusion of friendly warmth, or the ability to maintain sober thinking? Think about it. How many times after meeting with peers have you felt fatigue and emptiness instead of inspiration? Why does this happen? It's simple. Endless conversations about ailments and complaints do not give the brain food. They only drive it into a dead end. Think about it. Perhaps it's time to reconsider the very idea of old age, not as a stage of friendly feasts and empty talk, but as a time for true intellectual freedom. Old age is not the end, but a chance to prove that the brain is capable of shining brighter than in youth. And if, for the sake of this, you must abandon the usual social rules, should you be afraid of being left without extra acquaintances? In old age, you don't need crowds of friends. You need a brain that works. These words from Natalia Bekhtereva sound like a thunderclap from a clear sky. She, an academician, a world-class neurophysiologist who dedicated her entire life to studying the brain, had the right to make such sharp statements. For millions of people, old age is associated with a social circle, the warmth of company, and shared memories. But Bekhtereva said otherwise. The main thing is not the number of people sitting at the table with you, but how alive, flexible, and hungry for tasks your brain remains. Think about it. This woman, who spent the last decades of her life in science, solved the most complex problems until her final days, analysed new data, and wrote papers. She didn't rely on guesses. Her conclusions were born from laboratory observations, from hundreds of scientific experiments, from decades of practice. And that is why her words sound not like a beautiful phrase, but like a merciless verdict on familiar stereotypes. This is a fundamental contrast. Society convinces us that friendship and company are salvation from loneliness. But Bekhtereva asserted the opposite. She claimed that the brain can remain young and plastic even in deep old age, if it is given a constant load. But if one's social circle turns into a complaint club and empty talk, it works against you. The authority of science shatters established dogmas. When such words are spoken by a person who studied the brain not at the level of emotions, but at the level of neural connections and physiology, it is difficult to argue. Natalia Bekhtereva became the voice of reason for those seeking answers. How to live old age not in decrepitude, but in clarity. And her message was unequivocal. It is not the number of friends that extends the youth of the mind, but the power of thought and the ability to make your brain work every single day. How many times have you heard the same old phrases? The most important things in old age are money and loved ones nearby. It seems impossible to argue. This is what television, magazines, and neighbours say. But is it really true that a full wallet and noisy company make old age happy? Natalia Bekhtereva boldly destroyed this myth. She claimed, "Wealth and friendly feasts do not guarantee clarity of mind at all." Moreover, relying only on these factors often leads to the opposite result. We live in an era where old dogmas are bursting at the seams. How many examples are there of wealthy people in old age losing their ability to think, while those surrounded by a crowd of friends still fall into apathy and inner emptiness? Money cannot buy mental vigour. And as for your social circle, if it is toxic and parasitic on your energy, it is more likely to drag you into depression than support you. This is the very illusion that is convenient to believe in, but which has no solid ground. Stop doing this immediately. Stop believing in the sweet promises that friendly get-togethers are the salvation from old age. In reality, this can be a trap. Empty talk, complaints about health, endless gossip. This is not communication, but a quiet poisoning of the brain. It does not nourish. It destroys. And if you understand this, you have already taken a step forward. The myth of old age with friends and a full wallet has held on for decades, but today, neuroscience speaks directly. The brain demands not banal comfort, but daily strain. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, or how often your friends call, if the mind itself is falling asleep during this time. True wealth is the ability to learn, to think, to seek new answers. And this is precisely what becomes the main condition for a long and clear life. There are people who don't just fail to help, but actively destroy. They are called toxic. These are the very friends and acquaintances who, day after day, talk about their ailments, complain about life, and pull everyone around them into an abyss of despair. It seems like friendship, but in reality, it's a slow poison. Natalia Bekhtereva emphasized that such connections are more dangerous than loneliness. After all, emptiness at least offers silence, while a toxic environment turns into constant noise that corrodes the brain. Remember this aphorism: those around you benefit from your weakness. It is easier for them to live when someone nearby is worse off. If you are vigorous and full of energy, they feel small next to you. But if you allow yourself to be drawn into complaints and illnesses, you will become a convenient backdrop for them. It is easier for them to survive against the background of your decline. This is a cruel truth. but it is precisely what explains why friendship built on whining is destructive. A warning: this video is not for everyone. Many will not want to hear these words because they are used to justifying their social circle. But the facts remain. Toxic people slow down development, break character, and accelerate the decay of the mind. They instill in you the idea that being weak is normal, and as a result, you stop resisting and surrender your position. Bekhtereva argued, "What matters is not the number of people around you, but their quality." If conversations turn into gossip and complaints, they kill neurons faster than any disease. But if you are around those who pose questions to you, who throw down challenges, who make you think, the brain comes alive. Therefore, the main choice in old age sounds simple: to remain among the whiners or to choose intellectual freedom. And here, everyone has the right to say no to those who pull them down. Natalia Bekhtereva knew the value of words and always spoke with extreme clarity. The main resource of old age is not the company at one table and not the number of phone calls, but the quality of thinking. She emphasized that a person can be surrounded by dozens of acquaintances, but if these contacts do not stimulate the mind, the brain begins to fade. Loneliness is not frightening if it is filled with intellectual work. More frightening is the crowd around you that turns life into a swamp of empty talk. Her position was radical for its time. Society insisted to fear loneliness is to be normal, to seek a social circle is to be fine. But Bekhtereva contrasted this with a different view. Intellectual autonomy is capable of giving more than forced socialization. She believed that a person who is never bored when alone already possesses the main capital: a living and trained brain. This will make you rethink everything. After all, how many times have we believed that a large number of friends is a guarantee of happiness? In reality, according to the scientist, it is the excessive dependence on society that becomes the trap. It turns life into a series of mechanical meetings, where the brain rests rather than works. As a result, the mind degrades, losing flexibility and strength. Bekhtereva emphasized, loneliness filled with reading, learning new things, and reflecting is far more beneficial than constant presence in the company of whiners. Her words sound like a guide to action for everyone over 60. Old age can be not a time of decline, but an era of mental freedom. But for this, one must make a difficult choice. Fewer contacts, more load for the mind. Natalia Bekhtereva never said one should close off from the world and live in complete solitude. Her thought was different. The value of communication is measured not by the number of meetings, but by their content. Old age should not turn into a marathon of empty visits and endless gossip. Conversations just for show, discussing others' illnesses or neighbors' stories. All of this is not communication, but merely an imitation of life. The brain does not need such nourishment. For her, it was fundamentally important to emphasize. The quality of the connection determines whether old age will be a time of degradation or an era of development. One meaningful conversation with a person who knows how to ask questions and share knowledge can give the brain more than dozens of hours in the company of complainers. And conversely, constant presence in an environment where thoughts do not move beyond household trifles accelerates decrepitude. How to be silent and be heard. Sometimes silence and solitary reflection are more useful than 1,000 words spoken just to avoid being alone. In this silence, ideas are born. In it, the brain works, builds new neural connections, and searches for solutions to problems. But where chatter replaces thinking, the mind loses its sharpness and gradually fades. Bekhtereva called not for a rejection of society, but for filtration. Keep those nearby who support your interest in life, who stimulate reflection and new steps. It doesn't matter if there are few of them. That is not a problem. After all, one friend who inspires is more valuable than 10 acquaintances who drain your energy. And in this lies the main secret of productive old age: fewer random conversations, more real meaning. Modern neuroscience confirms what Natalia Bekhtereva spoke about for decades. Dementia is not a mandatory sentence for everyone who has crossed the 70 or 80-year threshold. Research in recent decades shows the brain is plastic. It is capable of creating new neural connections even at an advanced age. But for this, it must be kept in constant tone, regularly loaded, trained, and not allowed to be lazy. Scientists compare the brain's work to muscles. If they are not used, they atrophy, and an irreversible decline occurs. Large-scale experiments in Europe and America on thousands of elderly volunteers have proven those who solve intellectual tasks daily, read complex texts, or learn new skills are 2 times less likely to face cognitive decline. This means that it is not age that determines clarity of mind, but lifestyle. In other words, every person can influence whether their brain will fade or continue to work until their final days. Get ready to take notes. The key to longevity is regular work with the mind. Changing your usual route to the store, learning a foreign language, trying to master a musical instrument. All of this creates new neural connections. Even everyday tasks that require concentration work to preserve clarity. And conversely, years spent in monotony and mechanical actions become fertile ground for the brain's decay. The scientific data is merciless. Old age without brain training is a direct path to degradation. But old age with regular intellectual load is a chance for a clear mind, vigor, and a sense of one's own strength. That is why Bekhtereva said so confidently, "The brain is capable of living longer than the body if we do not let it fall asleep." Natalia Bekhtereva herself became living proof that her words were not empty. She lived a long life, full of scientific discoveries, and remained active until her final days. Even when her age passed 80 years old, she continued to write books, analyze data, and participate in conferences. For her, old age was not a time of decrepitude. It was a new stage of scientific activity. She never allowed her brain to fall asleep, setting complex intellectual tasks for herself daily. Her colleagues recalled that she could work for hours with scientific materials, never tiring of the details, and argued about new discoveries with the same passion as in her youth. It was this constant thirst for knowledge that made her unique. Bekhtereva never agreed with the idea that age dictates the laws of the mind. She proved that the brain is capable of remaining clear if it is kept at work until the very end. It is astonishing every time. After all, it is rare to meet a person who didn't just teach others, but walked the same path themselves. Bekhtereva did not limit herself to lectures and advice. She lived in accordance with her principles, and this inspired special trust. When she said that the brain is the main resource of old age, her personal example stood behind her words. There was no place for passivity in her life. While some of her peers indulged in complaints and empty talk, she set new goals for herself and achieved them. And this became the secret of her vigor and strength. For all who seek the answer to how to meet old age without decrepitude, Bekhtereva's story sounds like a manual. Keep your mind in motion, and you will maintain clarity until your very last day. We often confuse 2 completely different states, old age and decrepitude. In society, these words sound almost like synonyms, although in reality, there is an abyss between them. Old age is a natural stage of life, filled with experience, wisdom, and the opportunity to look at the world in a new way. Decrepitude, however, is a surrender of one's position, a refusal of activity, when a person stops fighting for clarity of mind and allows the body and mind to fade. Natalia Bekhtereva insisted, You must not place an equal sign between these concepts. Old age can be productive and bright. It offers a chance to live without the bustle of youth, but with depth of analysis and focus. A person of advanced age is capable of discovering new things, learning and creating if they keep their brain in tone. Decrepitude, however, sets in when the mind stops working, when a person turns every day into a repetition of yesterday. It is not age that is to blame, but the habit of passivity. Why is the difficult path the better one? After all, keeping the brain working is harder than letting it be lazy. But it is this difficult path that gives freedom from decrepitude. Reading, learning new things, solving problems, all of this is labor that requires effort. But within it lies the secret to old age remaining a time of strength, not decline. Bekhtereva emphasized that age is not a verdict. It is a condition. One can live to be 80 years old and remain in a clear mind, and one can lose interest in life at 50 and fall into decrepitude. Therefore, it is important to remember, old age is not a tragedy, but a natural stage that can be filled with energy. Decrepitude is a refusal to fight, and this refusal always begins in the head. Friends in old age can be a support, but only when they bring joy and share a desire for life, not when they plunge you into despair. Natalia Bekhtereva did not deny the value of communication as such. She only pointed to its quality. If you are around those who support, inspire, and offer new ideas and plans, then this truly extends clarity of mind. But if friendship turns into collective whining, into complaints about health, and constant reminders of age, then this is not help, but quiet destruction. The point is not to be left alone, but to learn to filter one's environment. One friend who shares energy is more valuable than 10 who take your strength. Old age is a time when it is especially important that every conversation opens a road to the future, not locks you in the past. Communication should motivate, push you toward movement, and help you make plans, even the simplest ones. A walk tomorrow, a new book, mastering a skill. Take a step toward change. Reevaluate your social circle right now. Ask yourself the question, who among those around you makes your life brighter, and who pulls you down? This choice may seem cruel, but it is precisely what determines what your tomorrow will be. Old age, filled with new plans and meaningful conversations, turns into a maturity that gives strength. Bekhtereva reminded us, the future does not end with retirement. It continues until the last day, and it is we who decide what it will be. Therefore, communication should be built not on memories of what is lost, but on the joy of what can still be discovered. Friends help in this only when they support your inner fire. Everything else is dead weight that is worth getting rid of. Natalia Bekhtereva left behind not only scientific works, but also specific advice that today sounds like instructions for preserving the youth of the mind. She emphasized, the brain must be trained daily, like muscles. Casual entertainment and light reading do not work. It is necessary to give yourself tasks that require effort. Read not light novels, but serious books that make you think and argue. Solve not just crosswords, but complex logical or mathematical problems. Look for non-standard paths, even in everyday trifles. She advised learning new things, foreign languages, music, computer programs. It doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is that the brain does not stop. One day, without a load, and the mind begins to get lazy. 1 month without a challenge, and plasticity weakens. Stop procrastinating. Do this right now. Even if it seems like a small thing, try a new route to the store. Learn 10 words in a foreign language. Try to cook an unfamiliar dish. All of this creates new neural connections. No less important was what Bekhtereva called emotional hygiene. She stressed, the nervous system needs balance after intellectual load, rest. After complex tasks, a switch. This is not laziness, it is the correct system. Like interval running, the brain must alternate tension and relaxation to maintain strength for many years. Bekhtereva's practical advice is simple and brilliant. Learn every day, reject automatisms, engage in things that require concentration. Let it be music, painting, or programming. The main thing is that you go beyond the habitual. The brain is not a vessel to be filled with facts, but a fire that must be rekindled again and again. And this is within everyone's power, regardless of age. Modern research confirms the words of Natalia Bekhtereva. Dementia is not an obligatory companion of old age, but only a consequence of lifestyle. Scientists observed elderly people for decades and came to an unequivocal conclusion. The brain is an instrument, and it works exactly as much as we use it. If the instrument lies idle, it rusts. But if it is put to work daily, it retains its strength and precision, even at an advanced age. In the reports of major clinics, one can find alarming figures. People who stop giving themselves an intellectual load are 2.5 times more likely to face symptoms of dementia. And those who continue to read serious texts, learn new things, and train their attention show resistance to cognitive decline even after 80 years old. This is not a miracle, but a pattern which is explained by the brain's neuroplasticity. Do this before the end of the day. Find a task that requires concentration and try to solve it. It can be anything: studying a new route, mastering a musical instrument, even a complex recipe in the kitchen. The important thing is that the brain does not turn the action into an automatism. Automatism is the main enemy because it switches off the thought process. Scientists often compare the brain's work to interval running. Short periods of load and pauses for recovery give a better result than constant overload or complete inaction. That is why it is important to combine work and rest. Bekhtereva spoke about the same thing. The brain must be strained, but also relaxed to preserve energy. Science confirms she was right. Old age with an active brain does not necessarily lead to decrepitude. On the contrary, it opens the way to a long, clear life in which the mind remains the main resource. Do not let your brain get lazy. This was the main appeal of Natalia Bekhtereva. Every day is a chance to give the mind a new challenge. You don't need to wait for a special moment or the right age. It is never too late to learn, and it is worth starting right now. The brain does not age as fast as the body if it is kept in motion. It responds gratefully to the load, creates new connections, and seeks non-standard solutions. But as soon as you give it rest, a slow descent into decrepitude begins. Act now, or you will regret it later. Today, you can choose to spend the evening in the usual routine, or pick up a book you've been putting off for years. Try to master a computer program you've always been afraid of. Ask yourself a question that has no ready answer, and try to find a solution. Even a simple exercise, like walking home a different way or rewriting your to-do list in an unusual order, triggers new mechanisms in the brain. You should motivate yourself not with fear, but with understanding. Clarity of mind is the main capital of old age. Money can run out, health can fail, but the ability to think remains your tool until the very last day. And the longer you train it, the longer you retain freedom and strength. Bekhtereva showed by her example, the work of the mind is a joy, not a punishment. She continued to research, write, and analyze when many of her peers found it difficult to even remember yesterday's events. Her instruction sounds clear. Engage in what requires concentration and effort. Let the brain burn, let it search, let it argue. Because this is the fire that makes old age a time of strength, not of decline. Natalia Bekhtereva knew how to formulate thoughts so that they turned into aphorisms that live longer than scientific papers. Her words sound not like dry formulas, but like covenants for everyone who wants to maintain clarity of mind. The brain is not a vessel that needs to be filled, but a fire that needs to be kindled. This phrase has long become famous. In it lies the whole essence of her approach. Not passive accumulation of knowledge, but constant search, movement, and tension. A fire does not burn by itself. It needs to be fed, and our mind is structured in exactly the same way. Her second quote sounds even stronger. We will not die as long as we have a goal. In these words, there is not just science, but also philosophy. A goal keeps a person in tone, does not allow them to relax and give up. Where there is no goal, emptiness sets in, and with it, decrepitude. But as soon as you set a task for yourself, even a small one, the brain comes alive, the body adapts, and life gains new meaning. These quotes are not just beautiful slogans for magazines, but the result of decades of work with the brain. Bekhtereva knew how quickly the mind surrenders without a load, and therefore she left us these formulas for survival. The fire of thought must be maintained, and a goal must always be present. This is what keeps a person alive until the very end. They contain a powerful emotional charge. These words are easy to remember, hard to forget, and impossible to refute. They sound like a challenge to everyone who is used to making excuses based on age. As long as there is a goal, and as long as the fire in the head burns, old age remains a time of strength, not of decline. This is exactly how Bekhtereva wanted us to look at life. Not as a gradual departure, but as an opportunity to kindle a new light within ourselves. You have just heard thoughts that turn the conventional idea of old age upside down. Natalia Bekhtereva showed. Age is not the end, but a new stage where the most important thing is not the number of friends and not the size of the pension, but the power of the mind. Old age can be bright, rich, and productive if every day you give the brain work, kindle its fire, and set a goal for yourself. Everything else is an illusion. Decrepitude comes not with years, but with the refusal to think, to learn, and to try new things. And if you have listened to this point, it means that this fire is already inside you. Do not let it go out. Remember Bekhtereva's advice and test it in practice. Look for new paths, and do not be afraid to go against stereotypes. This is the secret of strength that she spoke about all her life. Stop everything and focus. You have a choice. Close this video and return to your usual routine, or subscribe to the channel and continue the path to new knowledge with us. Here, we will analyze not only Bekhtereva's aphorisms, but also real facts of science, hidden myths, and unique stories that will help preserve clarity and vigor of mind for many years to come. So right now, press the subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Believe me, the most interesting part is ahead of us. This is only the beginning of a big conversation about how to live old age without decrepitude, maintain freedom of mind, and the joy of life. Do not miss this chance. Together, we will make your years truly meaningful and strong. You have been watching the Wisdom of Natalia Bekhtereva channel. If her thoughts resonate with you and you want to learn more, support us. Hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell icon so you don't miss new episodes.